remotely. The bring the meeting to order as that's 10 o'clock. Just a reminder, the meeting will be recorded and available to view the Council's website. Could I ask that IT colleagues start recording? Okay, and I now pass it to Christine to go through the sediment and to make any apologies.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. Councillor Douglas Reid.
Yeah.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Yeah, Christine, thanks.
Councillor John McFadden.
Good morning.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
I have an apology from Councillor Maureen Mackay. Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
And Councillor Drew Filson.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Christine. I can imagine we played Charlie up and Dunmelton this morning. Anyway, okay. To start off with the declaration of interest, there's nothing obvious. I don't think, David, not. There's no declaration of interest. Go straight to item 2. Today, of course, is our big housing meeting with a number of suite of papers. And to give us an overview, can I pass to Gary Craig from housing?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. Just a bit of an overview of some of the challenges that we are facing in housing and also some of the successes before we take you through the suite of papers this morning. Public Health Scotland estimated that 21% of Scotland's population were living in relative poverty after housing costs in 2020 to 2023. And we know that low-income households are more likely to live in cold and damp homes with associated ill health. We know that housing is a critical public health issue and that factors such as housing condition, energy efficiency, accessibility and affordability make a real difference in terms of physical and mental health outcomes. The right to an adequate standard of housing is directly linked to the right to the highest attainable standard of health, and we can't have one without having the other. The supply of good quality affordable housing is therefore absolutely key to addressing housing need and tackling fuel and child poverty, along with improving health and wellbeing outcomes. But the Housing Scotland regulator have been really clear in their annual report this year that the current context is testing and stretching the resilience, capacity and confidence of social landlords in a way that we have never seen before. They also highlighted that the coming years are likely to remain unpredictable, volatile and difficult for those who rely on social housing and also for those that provide it. So we have many significant challenges to face, but I hope that the following slides allow us to reflect on a small selection of the brilliant work being delivered through housing services over the last year, promoting the links between health and housing. There is so much more to be done, and we all welcome the further opportunities to work together. So the first slide, Ayrshire Garden, East Ayrshire Garden competition, which I know that some of you had the privilege of attending, and we saw some amazing entries in 2024. We were really delighted this year to include a new category for the best community garden in honour of tenant participation champion John Mac Mackenzie, and this award was presented on the day by his daughters Amberley and Victoria. And in terms of tenant participation, we were delighted to see the brilliant Gilfoot Tara win the Tenants Group of the Year at the recent Tenants Information Service Awards in Glasgow. Well done, Gilfoot. Our resettlement team continued to deliver brilliant work throughout 2024 that's been recognised as sector leading nationally, and it's making a huge difference. And as part of our affordable housing supply programme, works to deliver a mix of 48 general and particular needs homes at Kennedy Drive, Kilmarnock, are due to complete ahead of schedule, with the final handovers due in December this year. This net zero development has transformed the site of the previous Silverwood School, and the homes look absolutely fabulous. And Wallace Court was our most recent assisted living development, and it was completed in November 2023, offering support to adults with a range of disabilities to promote independent living. The development delivers a model that celebrates diversity, and it supports residents to flourish offering flexible, person-centred solutions and independent living for East Ayrshire service users, placing people at the heart of service design and delivery. And given that this is another net zero development, it's important to highlight that Housing Asset Services have recently invested in training and upskilling for operatives to allow the maintenance of the renewable technology in the form of air source heat pumps to be carried out in-house. In terms of housing improvement and housing investment works, this is an example of the kitchen refurbishments which are delivered as part of our Modern Facilities programme, a really customer-focused approach which produces impressive results. This slide perhaps gives a bit of detail. Housing Asset Services are delivering a range of pathfinder projects in terms of energy efficiency and the journey to net zero. And this particular project at East Main Street, Darvel, really highlights the extent of the work involved to deliver an ENERFIT standard. The work includes external wall insulation and internal wall insulation, low energy lighting, triple glazing, insulated doors, underfloor insulation, air source heat pumps, loft insulation, PV solar panels and mechanical ventilation systems. And another Pathfinder project which has just recently been completed at Grange Street, Kilmarnock, is really transformational, and again it includes a wide range of energy efficiency measures. We've talked for the last few years about the external envelope enhancement, which adopts a whole house approach to the fabric of homes, and that's continuing at pace, and it's really helping to tackle fuel poverty and to mitigate poor health impacts. These are before and after images of properties in Barbus and Road Auchinleck, and they really highlight the work. And again, another example of a whole house approach at Glen Shamrock Drive in Auchinleck, showing before and after images. The work's not only transforming communities, but is taking that fabric first approach to energy efficiency. And a real success story at Housing Asset Services is the brilliant trade apprenticeship programme. The Housing Improvement Programme really supports this. Currently have 45 trade apprentices in place, and that's providing opportunities for our young people and also opportunities for retraining. And talking about young people, supporting our young people is a key ambition and a theme within Housing Services. Blue Triangle Housing Association and East Ayrshire Council have developed specialist housing support to young people experiencing homelessness, and they've done that for a number of years. More recently, those transitioning from care to improve not only their housing options, but their overall health, well-being and life outcomes. The top image on the left, 2 young people and the staff member who are based at Whatriggs, and the activities are led by the young people. It's a great example of the supported environment that they enjoy and that they can directly shape. The bottom left image is of Chloe, who's in Blue Triangle Whatriggs presently, and she's looking really pleased with her provisional licence. Chloe's being supported until she is tenancy ready, and when that happens, she'll be rehoused via the strategic needs. And the main picture is of Emma, who some of you may know from the Care Experience Cabinet. Emma approached Housing Options to make an application after a relationship breakdown in 23, and she stayed at Blue Triangle Bank Street until September of this year. Through hard work, effort and ongoing support, Emma's been successful in her journey through college at Kilmarnock campus, and she's now a student at the University of Dundee, where she's studying a BA Honours in Fine Art. She's living life in student accommodation in Dundee, working part-time to subsidise her studies, and regular communication is still ongoing, and we wish Emma every success for her future. These are only a few examples of the brilliant partnership working which is helping prevent homelessness for our young people and allowing them the best opportunity to go on, succeed in life and thrive. And finally, the annual Chartered Institute of Housing Awards 24 saw Housing and Haas recognised in 4 different categories for excellence. The awards recognise teams and individuals that have shown creativity, passion and innovation in helping tenants, residents and communities throughout the year. The 4 pieces of work in particular, we had one in Excellence in Learning and Development, which is our Lead On programme, delivered by Helen Merriman and Karen Aitken. And it's a truly bespoke and tailored development programme which lasts 12 months, and it focuses on developing the future leaders for housing and HAS. We also had an entry in Excellence in Customer Service, and that is round about our Connecting Housing and Tenants visits, which are called CHAT. That's an annual structured visit to make sure that we are supporting the tenants and every tenant getting behind every single door within our stock at least once every year, to make sure that we support them the best way that we can, and that we also look after the asset the best way that we can. The third category was working in partnership, and that was aimed at Wallace Court's assisted living development, which was that brilliant example of partnership working in the delivery of the net zero development. And the final category was an excellence in health and wellbeing. And that was round about the work that Housing and HAS are doing, working really closely with tenants who have had no supply of gas. Through one reason or another, they have chosen to become disconnected. That has taken a whole different approach to the way that we're dealing with that, and we're working with tenants. The outcome being that within the first year, we've reduced the number by 50%, which is a really good outcome. And finally, it's not possible to do all of this without the staff and the teams. The service managers are all here today from Housing and Housing Asset Services, but all of the staff within Housing Service and Housing Asset Services deserve huge credit for their drive and determination to improve the outcomes for the people in the communities. Chair, I hope that I've set the scene, not only in terms of challenges, but also in terms of some of the successful outcomes that we've seen. We've spent a great deal of time over recent weeks engaging with elected members in terms of the papers that we brought to Cabinet today. And I'd like to hand over firstly to Chris Morton to present the first paper, which is the Local Housing Strategy Update.
Thanks, Gary. Good morning, members. I'd like to provide you today with the final annual update on the East Ayrshire Local Housing Strategy 2019 to 24. The strategy sets out the priorities for the delivery of housing and related services over a 5-year period. It informs and sits alongside a suite of strategic housing papers, such as the Housing Asset Management Framework, the Housing Investment Programme and the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, to inform work streams such as stock management, investment in existing stock and affordable housing supply. It also sets out the important contribution that housing makes to improving health and well-being, creating connected and sustainable communities, enabling economic growth and regeneration, reducing climate change, and tackling poverty across East Ayrshire. Each year we provide an update on the action plan within the LHS in order to monitor progress and identify challenges. The LHS vision and 4 core outcomes remain unchanged over the 5-year period, and a reminder of these is contained within the update. The final update also includes a spotlight on specific housing-related services, highlighting the human element behind the data and the difference the work of staff make to the customers and clients receiving the services. We have highlighted the good work of the East Ayrshire Care and Repair Service, the Housing First approach, the Assisted Living Unit at Wallace Court, the Refugee Resettlement Programme, the Universal Credit Support Team, and the Lemonade Service. In relation to the action plan contained within the strategy, assessment of performance is carried out annually and uses a traffic light scoring system. Over the period 23 to 24, the number of actions within the green status increased from 69 to 73. Amber and red actions fluctuate, but overall show a downward trend over the course of the strategy. This shows a positive direction of travel in relation to the actions within the LHS and over the 5-year duration of the LHS. Moving forward from the current strategy, East Ayrshire Council has been working in partnership with a housing consultant and housing market partners to develop the next housing need and demand assessment, also known as the HNDA. The HNDA is a technical exercise to determine the location and amount of housing need across East Ayrshire. The assessment provides evidence on which the Council and its partners can base planning and policy decisions around future delivery of both market and affordable housing. The HND has been submitted to the Scottish Government Centre for Housing Market Analysis for review and approval. The policy and strategy team are currently developing the next local housing strategy, and this will be informed by the findings of the HNDA and current legislative changes such as Housing to 2040 and the current Housing Scotland Bill. Demographic trends show an ageing population, and this will of course inform future services and strategic direction. However, the strategy will look at housing and service provision to all age groups, including young people, and particularly our promise to care experienced young people and the prevention and alleviation of youth homelessness. Alongside wider consultations, we have developed a youth housing survey, which will allow us to drill down into the housing experiences and aspirations of young people, particularly those that have experienced youth homelessness. The new strategy will be finalised and presented to Cabinet in 2025. So the recommendations for the Local Housing Strategy Annual Update are contained within paragraph 2 of the Cabinet paper and are as follows. To note the achievements over the last 12 months and the final annual update to the LHS Action Plan. To note that the next Housing Need and Demand Assessment has been submitted to the Scottish Government Centre for Housing Market Analysis for their review and approval. To note that work is underway to develop the next local housing strategy, and to otherwise note the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Just kind of maybe say to Gary, first of all, for an excellent presentation. Some of the work that's going on, it's always good to see that this, as part of this report. I think your staff have to be congratulated for their efforts. Loads of good work going on there, as you said, in terms of the strategy. And then although we're performing well and our rent levels are lower than the Scottish average, we do know that some of the demography in terms of increasing elderly population and poverty levels, and there's absolutely no complacency as we need to do what we can to alleviate poverty, in particular child poverty, and to look after the elderly and the vulnerable in our communities. But with that, I'll open it up to members if comments. Jim, Barry.
Thanks, Dougie. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Chris. Individually as the papers unfold, coming to the end of that strategy and moving on to 25-30. Remember, this one's might be for Blair as opposed to Gary or Chris's. That vision and maybe a wee bit of foresight and a flavour of what's about to come and what the vision would be over the next 5 years might be helpful. Gives a wee indication where that's going.
Through you, Chair, and good morning, members. So Gary mentioned in his presentation at the outset in terms of public health, and when we see public health reports, they more than often than not refer to having good quality, accessible and affordable housing is at the key in terms of progressing those priorities. So bringing that into a more current context, Housing to 2040, the route map for that also recognises that good affordable housing and positive neighbourhoods lead to reduced poverty and inequality, as Leader mentioned, better health outcomes, improved educational attainment and more cohesive communities. So it sets out actions that will benefit people's health and well-being through improving access to housing, to tackle homelessness, to driving up housing standards, and being really a catalyst for that independent living. So our LHS in the next 5 years will have a real strong focus on tackling these matters, in terms of the delivery of type, location and scale, while clearly taking cognizance of the demographic changes that you referred to, Lida. We would need to clearly align that to a local development plan, but also the depopulation analysis that's been carried out by colleagues within corporate support, recognising that housing will just be one of the many determining factors in terms of tackling this as well. So that would be what I would foresee, Councillor McMacken, in terms of the next 5 years in our priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Blair. And there's a lot in there to unpack and up and that, but I think the priorities are absolutely right. And I think even with that statement there, we realise that a house is not just a home, it's for everything affecting your education, your health, your well-being. That independent living is really important as we go forward. And I think it's really important, and I'll touch on this probably later on about the type of housings, location, scale and demographics, but thanks very much for that just now, Blair.
Barry.
Thank you, Leader. Just also to Gary and Chris and Blair as well, and all the team, just thank them for everything they do. Most of the members in here, their biggest part of their workload will be housing related, I would expect. So you hear from us a lot, and we do, I suppose, rarely get the chance to publicly thank you for everything you do. Just in relation to, in particular, things to point out, obviously really welcome the development at Silverwood Grove and ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. Same at Jane Danbury Gardens. I'm aware that that's been completed ahead of schedule, and whilst not ours, it is our it's East Ayrshire tenants that are going there, which is great to see. In terms of the CIH awards as well, brilliant. We punch above our weight in terms of this authority, and that's to be recognised and welcomed. In terms of the HNDA, obviously that has now been submitted. When are we expecting to have some more feedback from the government and sort of approval timescales around that? Chris, probably best for you.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. We're hoping to have the feedback from the CHMA. They've given us a provisional date of the 24th of January. It's just unfortunate that we're submitting it over Christmas and there's a lockdown across that period, but the date we've been given is the 24th of January 2025.
Just to add to that, are we expecting from the government anything that you think may be coming up, or any issues that quite comfortable, Blair?
Through you, Chair, it's a really robust process that we've been through to get us to the point in which we submit it to the Scottish Government. I would expect minimal, if not no changes to the analysis that we've carried out. Thank you.
I mean, we've had the visit from Paul McLennan recently. We pushed home some of the issues, local issues, particularly depopulation in the south, and some of the demands. We've got other demands in the north, and the growing elderly population, and we continue to have that dialogue. Very relatively good relationship, but we absolutely need to lobby where we can, and we always will to try and secure the best we can for East Ayrshire. Anybody else? Okay, Chris, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Blair, too. And can we agree recommendations in that paper? We're now over to item 3. Gary, that's yourself.
Thanks, Chair. The Housing Asset Management Framework, or the HAMF as it's known, has been used since 2016. Recommendations being presented annually to Cabinet, most recently in November 2023. And the key aims of the paper are to update Cabinet on HAMF activities and projects, to make a number of recommendations to Cabinet around the asset management of our housing stock, and to identify the recommended rent setting position. Paragraphs 3 to 8 in the paper set out the background and the approach to housing asset management, along with the matrix results. Our framework follows the guidance from the Scottish Housing Regulator's recommended practice on strategic asset management and assesses our stock in terms of overall performance from a housing management and a stock condition perspective. It identifies our current stock using a RAG status, and highlighted properties are then considered by a cross-service review team. Red stock is categorised with potential solutions which may include housing management actions, disposal, investment work, demolition and/or refresh. Paragraph 6 highlights our position in terms of the matrix, with 79.8% of properties being identified as green, 18.4% identified as amber, and 1.8% or 221 properties being identified as red. Table 2 in paragraph 7 highlights how those red properties are split across the 3 housing management areas. Paragraphs 9 to 23 provide an update around HAMV projects that are ongoing or had received previous Cabinet approval. Paragraphs 9 to 11 highlight 2 blocks of 4 flatted properties in Merrick Drive, Bellsbank, previously identified for demolition, with a recommendation to now dispose of, if possible, given the current market interest to achieve a capital receipt. Paragraphs 12 to 16 highlight an updated position with regards to the flatted properties at Witch Road, Dean Street and Orchard Street. Members will recall that recommendations were approved by Cabinet on the 22nd of November 2023 to carry out large-scale improvement works to these blocks, coupled with the demolition of both wing blocks of flats, and the projected cost for that work was £3.3 million. These proposals took cognizance at the time of the significant development works that had taken place in recent areas in that area. To allow any of the work to proceed, we required full consent of every shop owner within the block, and significant efforts were undertaken to engage with shop owners to gain that consent, with full consent being achieved in July 2024. The time taken to gain consent, however, coupled with the Council's current financial position and pressures on the housing revenue account, as set out in paragraph 49, necessitated the need for the project costs to be revisited and revised. The outcome of this exercise is that projected project costs increased from £3.3 million to £4.41 million as a result of inflation and utilising additional market intelligence gained from other council projects. Applying best value principles, this project is no longer viable. As a result of the significantly changed financial position, increased interest from market in terms of purchase and development of the properties, and to ensure that best value is achieved for the Council, Cabinet are now recommended to revoke the previous decision made and to now approve disposal of all Council interest in these properties on the open market, which would achieve a capital receipt. Paragraphs 18 to 21 provide an update in terms of Clinchard Place in Galston and highlight that while the Health and Social Care Partnership are still proposing to utilise 2 of these 4 blocks as an extension to their moving on service, if the project is unable to be confirmed by the 31st of the 3rd, 25, those 2 blocks will require to be disposed of on the open market. Paragraphs 24 to 46 set out new HAMV projects, including the recommendation in terms of lockups. Paragraphs 24 to 30 relate to Richmond Terrace in Cumnock. This area has been subject to a number of structural assessments since 2020, with external retaining walls throughout the area showing signs of cracking and movement. Annual assessments to monitor the walls for any further deterioration have been carried out, with the most recent structural inspection being carried out on the 7th of June 2024. While issues are noted throughout the site, the lifespan of the block 6 to 13 Richmond Terrace requires urgent action with an identified lifespan of 2 years. Various structural concerns have been raised with the retaining walls at the bin store areas, garden ground and retaining walls to the rear of the garden. The size of the walls varies in height and have been identified as technically very difficult to repair, with the most appropriate course of action identified as demolition. There are 8 properties in total in this block, comprising 5 council, 2 owner-occupied and 1 private let. Cabinet are requested to approve that the Council obtain full ownership of the block via the acquisition of 3 former council homes and thereafter the demolition of the block at 6 to 13 Richmond Terrace. The cost of delivering this project is estimated to be £538,000. Owing to the prevalence of retaining walls and associated issues throughout the Richmond Terrace area, Cabinet are also asked to note that Housing Services will review the wider area and that a further update will be presented to Cabinet in November 2025. Paragraphs 31 to 33 highlight a block of 4 bedsit flats in Barnwell Road, Hurlford, that the Health and Social Care Partnership are looking to utilise in terms of delivery of community-based adult services. Again, if the partnership are unable to confirm that this will proceed by the 31st of March 25, the recommendation is that these properties will be disposed of in the open market with a capital receipt sought. Paragraphs 34 to 37 highlight 2 properties in Ladeside Gardens that have been vacant since 2011 due to water ingress in the Solom area of the buildings. Efforts to identify a solution have now been exhausted, and members are asked to approve the demolition of both properties with the associated gable end treatment to the adjoining property at number 19, which is unaffected by the issues. Consultation will take place thereafter with the local community to optimise the future use of the site. Paragraphs 38 to 46 set out the position with regards to lock-up garages, and it highlights that 53.3% of our lock-ups are classified as red status within the matrix. It's proposed that a rolling programme of demolitions will be identified within each housing management area, which will not exceed a cumulative total of £150,000 per annum. And the projects for 25-26 are identified as 1 to 14 Meagher or Marcourt in Cumnock, 1 to 12 and 13 to 23 Bridgehouse Hill Road in Kilmarnock, and 1 to 8 Kirkton Home Place in Kilmarnock. All of these lockups are currently vacant, and the project would include demolition and making good of the site. Paragraphs 48 to 52 of the paper highlight the rent setting and the consultations. Members, ensuring that we strike the best balance in terms of the sustainability of our assets, address poorly performing stock, work to meet our energy efficiency ambitions, and understand the impact that the cost of living crisis is having have never been so difficult. Effective asset management is fundamental to the successful delivery of the Council's objectives, and to do this we need to ensure that rents are set appropriately. There are a number of inflationary pressures which have impacted on the rent settings set out in the table and highlighted in paragraph 49. The net outcome of those are that we have a total amount to be funded of 3.752 within the House and Revenue account, £3.752 million rather. All of this means that the shortfall will require to be funded, and a percentage rise of 7% would be required. As part of the rent setting strategy for 24-25 to enable the delivery of the proposed SHIP, HIP and HAMF recommendations that are set out in today's paper, the intention is again to split the rent proposals to allow tenants to help to inform the decision made. It is therefore proposed to undertake a comprehensive consultation period on the following options. Proposal 1, a rent increase of 7%, which is an average increase of £5.95 per week. The impact of this increase is shown in Table 4. And Proposal 2, a rent increase of 8%, which would be an average increase of £6.80 per week. If this proposal were to be agreed, the additional rental income would be utilised to allow East Ayrshire Council to deliver circa 50 affordable new homes on a site within East Ayrshire, which would be identified through the HNDA that Chris referred to. The rent consultation with tenants is anticipated to commence from Monday the 2nd of December until Friday the 24th of January inclusive, and all tenants will have the opportunity to engage with the consultation. The implications of the paper are set out in paragraphs 53 to 71. And in conclusion, the House and Asset Management Framework has been developed to ensure that East Ayrshire Council's housing stock meets both the present and future needs of tenants, sustainability of tenancies is improved, and that we make best use of the resources available. The recommendations are set out in the paper in paragraph 2, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gary. Again, excellent presentation there. Just maybe before I open it up, I'll maybe speak to a couple of parts of the recommendations that particularly as affect my own ward locally. I know Jim, as spokesperson, maybe want to speak to the wider issues and relating to the housing asset management framework. But can I maybe specifically in terms of Dean Street shops? This has been a really difficult one. So I know that you've had support from all the local members and trying to do something that as often has been referred as the last piece of the jigsaw in terms of regeneration of the kind of central north area in Kilmarnock. And it's it's difficult to try and get a solution. I mean, it's an important area economically. You've got every single one of these shopping units are occupied, and there's people employed and livelihoods at stake there. So we want to make sure that we get something that suits the businesses there. But our main interest is obviously housing. And, I think you've came to the right decision. Sometimes we do invest in the house and we look to get other benefits from it in terms of regeneration and some of the other things that it does, not just homes, but it helps the community in a wider sense, and that's right. But I think this was very much pushing the limits of that, and I don't think you could justify the unit spend on these houses. And thankfully, there's been more market interest. I'll not say much more than that because I know that's a matter of kind of confidentiality, but it's good to see that that's happening. We need to explore that and make sure we get best value for our rent payers and the wider community. So I look forward to a wee update on that. I'm just looking for an assurance, particularly from the businesses there, that we'll be looking to do something as soon as we can and keep them informed all the way through. The other item was in terms of the lockups, and I'm glad to see that Curtin Home Place is one of the sites identified for demolition, but 53%, red lined properties. And I know some of the members with some of the bigger schemes in New Farm, Monthang, Belfield and Shortleys and right across East Ayrshire. There's a number of lock-up sites that have been lying vacant, but I think there's potential opportunities to develop these in a kind of creative way. These are very much land assets and community assets. We want to, sweat the best use of them as we can. So there's loads of opportunities. I'm quite sure local members will be interested, but it'd be good to get that wee bit more detail on it, where these properties are and where the potential is to develop these, because I think it's a problem that we've had, but we haven't given it as much attention, I think, as it deserves. But thankfully, we're mentioning it here. So I'll bring in Jim and I'll bring in Barry.
Thanks, Leader. You touched on a couple of things I was going to touch on there, so they're well covered. Richmond Terrace, first of all, thank the teams in the wide have conducted this. I've been involved in a couple of meetings, and I think everybody involved is on board with the proposals that's put forward. I know there is ongoing issues about Richmond Terrace, and I look forward to with anticipation to see what's going to be brought forward to us as far as the wider Richmond Terrace area goes. If I could move on to the rent setting proposals, 7 and 8%. I think at the Housing Conveners Forum last week, I was I think that's a kind of national trend when we're looking at the potential rises for 30 authorities, looking at between 6 and 8, and 2 actually looking potentially up to 10. I think it's a sign of the times and the circumstances that's already been touched on. Increased cost that we find we're in a position that to go to consultation and increases such as high as that. Given that, it would be, where would we be sitting nationally in that kind of league table with such proposals at 7%? Where would that leave us sitting nationally? I know it's hard to answer that question, but on the assumption that other authorities are going to be the same, I would imagine we'd be sitting roughly around about the same areas as where we are. I'm hoping that Clinchard Place and the funding for that comes in and that moving on stage can be carried on with the Health and Social Care Partnership. But what potentially are the chances of that happening? And I suppose Lakeside Gardens, I think that's been ongoing. It's well been recognised for previous discussions that everything has been exhausted, and it's only option for us is now to go to demolition. So I suppose the questions are running about it is where we would sit nationally in that league table and the chances of Clinchard Place funding.
Yep, through your chair. Bit of context, so our expected average rent for the current year is sitting at £84.98 compared with an expected national average of £89.25. So below the national average right now, we are sitting, as it stands, 20th highest in that league table of local authorities in Scotland. If we were to implement the 7% increase and every other authority, for instance, implemented a 5% increase, which would be lower than I would expect. But if that was to happen, it would move us to 17th highest in that table. And as you say, the authorities that I'm aware of that are consulting just now are consulting at levels in line with the proposals that we've made, or indeed higher. With regards to Clinchard Place, and I should say that the rental income at 7% allows us to carry on with that really significant level of investment in our stock and the plans set out in the HIP and the SHIP, as I alluded to. In terms of Clinchard Place, I've spoken to senior managers at Health and Social Care Partnership, and we'll be meeting with them again in early December after their strategic board meet to discuss, and we will. We've already got it on the agenda for the Future Homes Board meeting in December.
No, I think that's absolutely right, Gary, in terms of the investment, that you're saying there at the end there, it helps the circular economy, and that's why we've got 45 apprenticeships there, and it helps us to sustain them and grow even more apprenticeships. But we acknowledge that there's hardship involved there in terms of some of the tenants have to bear the burden of this increase. But hopefully we can have that investment that helps everyone right through the economy. Just maybe mentioned the Ladeside Gardens one as well in Comores. I think that, there's opportunities there. I mentioned some of the potential with the lock-up sites, and maybe just like a kind of comment there, but I think referring specifically to Ladeside Gardens, I think it's right in the heart of Comores, and I think there's a potential, a really good project there that the community are interested in to develop that area in this particular location. Maybe just a wee comment on that.
No, absolutely. There's been some early thoughts and proposals round about a low-level garden area that would be accessible for tenants and residents, particularly in that area. But ultimately, we will really consult with the community and make sure that we achieve what the community want, as opposed to taking something and delivering it to them. We'll make sure that they're involved all the way through that and make the best use of the space.
Thanks for that. Barry.
Thanks, Leader. Just a few comments and questions to follow. In relation to Dean Street, Witch Road, Orchard Street, I think the regeneration in central North Kilmarnock has been fantastic, providing accommodation that we desperately need. I wouldn't say I wouldn't be disappointed but the build costs, I understand completely in Dean Street. But we have businesses there. They are, local businesses on the whole, and we need to make sure we do all we can to work with those businesses. In terms of any sale there to the private sector, now whilst there is other legislation in place, for example, HMO, if that was an issue, or, there's other ways of dealing with things, I just wondered if we had any discussions maybe with planning colleagues about the kind of master plan approach. Somebody is taking the building on, and short of just turning them back into flats as they are, if they were doing anything else that perhaps we can, through the marketing, we can maybe push that they have early discussions with planning, and I think we can then shape if there is anything potentially that we would have concerns about coming through in terms of the marketing, that's dealt with at that stage. But yep, it is the last piece of the block in central North Kilmarnock, and it'll be good to see that brought back into economic use without a doubt. In relation to Clinchard Place, absolutely agree with the comments that have been made, and I hope the Health and Social Care Partnership are able to deliver something here. And similarly for Barnwell Drive in Hereford, but a slight declaration of interest in this, in that I know as a board member of the Hereford Tool Library, along with Councillor Barton and the other elected members in Ward 4, that they have been looking at premises. They are actively looking at something else at the moment, but I wondered if we were in a position where that potentially the SCP weren't able to take something forward, the ban wheel drive, that maybe would look at community asset transfer. I don't know, or is this strictly going to be going out to market? Just a question. In Ladeside Gardens, Comores, I think it's always difficult to take a decision where it's housing stock that we desperately need, and in a really central location in Comores. And I know we've exhausted, from what you've told me, all options here. I take it we have not considered a private sector sale there in relation to something that we feel could be done or otherwise with the private sector there. I would have thought not. If we can't do it, I wouldn't have thought they'd be able to do it. But just a comment on that, please. And on the lock-up garages, and I know Gary and I have discussed this, I did wonder if there was an opportunity. I think there's some that potentially we could use for future building of our own, but are there some that we could dispose of? But making sure, of course, these are not going to become lock-up sites again, and potentially for commercial use, they would have to be, flattened sites and cleared for residential development, whether that be private sector or any of our RSL partners there. I'm just, again, thinking ahead to the future there, because a lot of these lock-ups, I'm thinking particularly Moan Ward and New Farm Loch, they're centrally located around other housing, that actually housing might well be the future there for these sites. And I just wondered if we'd given consideration to selling them off. Taken on board, again, any comments from planning colleagues that we would not want to be seeing any commercial activities in these lockups being used for those kind of purposes. So my other point on Dean Street, just to ask, in terms of antisocial behaviour issues in and around that area, which we know has blighted those flats in the past in that immediate vicinity, that what steps we can take just now to make sure, whilst the buildings are secure, that in that interim period, whilst there's that marketing period, to make sure they get the best opportunity for somebody, if they're coming to see them, that they can take them forward. My last question in this is if you can just confirm to me, in terms of the number of our tenants who would be impacted by any rent increase and the numbers that aren't, or partially, if you can just confirm that to me, that would be helpful. And a bit of chat around rent arrears, and just, I know it's very difficult to model, but we know that it's increasing across the board throughout Scotland, but just any kind of trends or anything we're seeing that we're expecting. And, I don't know if there can be work done to model what we're expecting in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, there was a lot in that, Councillor Douglas, so apologies if I've missed anything. I'll go through what I've got. So Dean Street, absolutely working with existing owners and businesses, because that's really crucial. We did go to market previously, and we did have interest in these properties, and at that time we asked all of the potential bidders to make a case for what their development would look like and what their plans would be. So we will be doing exactly the same again, and we will be looking for the best outcome in terms of that sale. We are limited in our powers once the properties are sold, clearly, but we want to try and engage with the best possible outcome for those buildings. In terms of Barnwheel Road, if Health and Social Care Partnership are unable to take it forward, then absolutely everything would be open. I think we talked about that before, and we talked about that with one of the other sites in terms of veterans, for instance. So we would be looking at all of the groups that could potentially benefit from that, and that would be open. Ladeside Gardens, we obviously considered everything in terms of would it be possible to sell on. It just wasn't the technical information that was coming back, as this is linked to ground and strata, and it's unsolvable in that area in terms of housing. Lock-up sites, absolutely, you're right, and that's entirely how we see it, that some of these areas of ground, these plots of ground, could be excellent opportunities in future for small development works in terms of housing. And that was partly the reason that the board took the decision to say that we were demolishing and clearing the site, as opposed to trying to get a receipt for it. So that definitely comes in to the mix. In terms of impact and rent, the best information that we've got just now is that 62% of our tenants would not be impacted at all because of UC or housing benefit, and that an additional 11% would only be partially affected because of that. So in real terms, 27% of our tenants would face the full impact of any rent increase. The modelling of rent arrears is very fluid. It's really difficult to do. I think probably the positive side of that is that we, through house management, are working as hard as we possibly can with anybody that's impacted through a number of opportunities that we've got to try and help people and make sure that they're signposted and supported in every way that we can to stop that happening. And I think that's where our focus really needs to be. Hopefully I've covered everything. Yeah.
Barry, what back in? Yeah.
Yep, just on the issue of Dean Street. So just so I'm clear, this wouldn't therefore, the sale wouldn't be necessarily to the highest bidder. It is a combination of the outcome there and the bid, I would imagine. Is that the case? Just to get some clarity in that, Gary.
So we need to finalise that with colleagues in the council just to see what we can and can't do. The optimum would be that it would be a scored bid that we would be able to evaluate in some way. But we'd need to work out the terms and what we're able to do in terms of that. I did miss one of the bits in Dean Street. You talked about keeping it safe. So actually we're right out there probably this week, making safe to areas in the roof. One of the roof lights had been damaged. There had been some ingress of birds, so that's all been cleared so that we are able to market the property.
No, thanks for that, Gary. And you did make the point about the local members having been engaged. Obviously, there's now a new elected member, Councillor Sangster, there. I know you've taken the opportunity to have a quick discussion with her, but obviously, if you can keep her up to speed along with the other elected members for that ward, that would be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Yeah, I would hope that we'd continue to consult the 4 local members in Ward 3, just in terms of that. Just before I go on, just the Chief Executive has helpfully pointed out in page 64, paragraph 50, the proposals, and that's why he's paid that money. It's 25, 26, no, 24, 25. I don't know. I think we've all missed that at the pre-agenda and whatever, but well done, Eddie, in spotting that one. Somebody want to correct. Anything else? Claire, you wanted to come out? Oh, Drew was first thing, Claire. Sorry, Claire.
Thanks, Chair. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the full housing team for all the great work they do and all the support to me and my constituents in the Doon Valley, especially Neil McCulloch, when I phone him every Friday about 4 o'clock, and nothing's a problem to him, but thanks for that, and sorry Neil. But in relation to Merrick Drive, Dolmellington, these are 3-bedroom houses, Lindsay houses. I was brought up on these myself in Bellsbank. They were made into 8, I think it was, 1-bedroom flats, and it didn't work out. These are really sought after 3-bedroom houses, basically again in Bellsbank. They're really scarce. I just wondered, we look at what the price would be to put them back into 3-bedroom houses.
Through you, Chair, yeah, we had a lot of conversation at the Future Homes Board about these, Councillor Filson. The costs, and I'm going from memory, were certainly in excess of £600,000 to bring these back in, and it just wasn't affordable for the house types that we were going to end up with. So again, if we can realise a small capital receipt and we can continue to invest in the stock in that area, I think that's the best outcome.
That's fine, Gary. Thanks very much.
Through. Claire.
Thanks, Dougie. I'd like to thank the housing team as well. I think they do an amazing job, and I'm also a regular knocker at your door on Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock as well. And thanks for answering. It's just a couple of points I wanted to make, and it's gone back to the lockups. And I know that I nearly said Provost, I know that Councillor Jim Todd raised this earlier, and it's about the lockups in Ward 5 at Fort Riggs and possibly looking to them as a turning point for the school, if we could just have that noted, because we're talking about imaginative ways of using the spaces and taking the ownership. Also, the ones at Short Leys I see in the red status, I'm glad they're going. They are an eyesore, and they detract from the neighbourhoods completely. Also, they're becoming a dumping ground. People think they're safe to go there, fly tip dump, and it's so unfair on the people that live there. I think getting rid of them is the best news I've heard in a long time regarding the area. Also, we're talking about taking back ownership and using our imagination. So I'm sure we'll be contacting our local communities to see how they would like to see the spaces used. So listen, thanks again very much. Excellent papers, and I really appreciated the briefing the other night, long as it was. Thank you.
That's clear. Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. Just carrying on the theme of lock-up garages. There has been a row of unused derelict garages close to where I live being demolished and landscaped, and it has enhanced that open area. And yes, it was a hot spot for people fly tipping, and I've saw no fly tipping in that area since that has happened. I have noticed a bit of fly tipping next to the new corral bin, so perhaps it's moved there, but in my mind, if there's going to be any fly tipping, I'd rather it happen next to the bins rather than where the people are living round about the residents. And I do have an area in Ward 2 that will maybe bring to attention, but I'll pick it up offline. Thank you.
For a good discussion, I'm just wondering if there's anything else want a quick word on anything. No, so we'll carry on to the next bit, which is the housing improvement programme. Neil.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the progress of the housing investment programme and to seek approval of the recommendations set out at paragraph 2. The delivery of the housing investment programme continues to face ongoing challenges in the availability of resources and the procurement of contracts due to economic uncertainty and increasing costs within the construction market. Scottish Housing Quality Standard is set out in paragraphs 7 to 11, and our compliance with SHQS shows a recovering position from 94.95% at the 31st of March 2022 to 97.95% at the 31st of March 2023. The energy efficiency standards for social housing are set out in paragraphs 12 to 24, and our position with regard to meeting each one is that 99.5% of our properties meet this current standard. As noted in previous reports, the Scottish Housing Regulator has advised landlords that the 2025 and the 2032 EISH milestones are temporarily on hold, and the collection of data on EISH 2 will be paused until after the conclusion of the Scottish Government's review. The consultation on the new social housing net zero standard closed on the 8th of March this year, with the revised standard anticipated to be published during 2025. The interim guidance published by the Scottish Government suggests that landlords should continue with planned investment in energy efficiency measures and look to decarbonise heating systems. The guidance also highlights that since measures are likely to be paid from rental income, landlords need to be mindful to ensure that investment to reduce fuel poverty does not lead to rent poverty. Housing Asset Services and Facilities and Property Management are currently reviewing standards and specifications as part of the procurement process for future external envelope enhancement programmes. Evaluation and modelling of housing stock is also ongoing whilst we await the publication of the new standard. The impact of external factors are set out in paragraphs 25 to 26. An increased demand in the construction sector arising from the availability and cost of key construction materials and for construction workers have impacted the procurement, delivery and financial profiling of investment programmes. Significant costs continue to be reported as procurement exercises for key programmes of work conclude. In addition to the demand reported for materials and resources, the increase can also be attributed to economic uncertainty and energy costs. Housing to 2040 set out in paragraphs 27 to 30. The Scottish Government's Housing to 2040 strategy published on the 15th of March 2021 sets out a vision for a new housing standard to cover new and existing homes to ensure there's no acceptance of substandard homes. The new 10-year neutral housing standard aims to ensure that everyone can have a warm, comfortable and safe place to live. The Scottish Government recognised that a 10-year neutral housing standard will not be sufficient on its own to ensure that housing quality improves. Issues including financial support enforcement required to be considered alongside the issues in mixed tenure blocks. So it's clear that the aims and objectives of Housing to 2040 will undoubtedly bring significant financial challenges for us and every other local authority around the new housing standard and decarbonisation. And that brings us to our planned investment. And planned investment is set out in paragraphs 31 to 76. The proposed paper continues to focus on the delivery of key investment areas. Paragraphs 37 to 46 outline the whole house approach for external envelope enhancement. The proposed programme continues to support the inclusion of 400 addresses per year to receive this work over the period of the plan, moving the replacement towards a life cycle of circa 30 years. Paragraph 43 provides an update on Pathfinder projects which Housing Asset Services are delivering in collaboration with the Energy Agency. And paragraph 44 highlights that Housing Asset Services are working closely with colleagues in economic growth, including the Ayrshire Growth Deal team, on opportunities aligned with the Community Renewable Energy Project, or CORE. There's work ongoing on a demonstrator project for CORE, which builds upon and adds value to the existing Pathfinder project, which Housing Assets are delivering, with the main objective to evaluate and monitor the effectiveness of different approaches to inform investment in wider housing stock. Paragraphs 47 to 49 highlight the proposed programme for installation of energy efficient doors and windows, with 200 homes included per year for the period of this plan, in addition to those being addressed through the external envelope enhancement programme. It's also proposed in paragraphs 50 to 53 that we will continue to install high efficiency gas heating systems while looking at renewable technologies and opportunities. 800 homes are included per year for the period of this plan. Paragraphs 54 to 57 sets out a proposal for modern facilities and services to continue with the increased delivery of 680 homes per annum for the period of the plan approved by Cabinet last year. This reprofiling will improve the council's stock, help mitigate rising maintenance requirements and promote increased tenant satisfaction, whilst continue to work towards a replacement life cycle of circa 18 years. Given the challenges being faced in terms of productivity, efficiency and significant cost increase realised over recent years, the most efficient and effective delivery of this programme will now be a combination of both in-house delivery and an increased reliance on the use of our external partner. Whilst the external partner continues to be required to deliver the works to the increased number of addresses, the design and supervision activities associated with this work will be carried out by Housing Asset Services to maintain high standards and continuity of delivery. The roofline inspection condition report set out in paragraphs 58 to 64. So following approval from Cabinet on the 22nd of November 2023, a procurement exercise was undertaken with a contractor awarded to include the cleaning, inspection and reporting on the roofline elements of council-owned properties. The roofline inspection and condition report programme commenced on the 18th of March 2024. The costs for this service with the appointed contractor are significantly less than market research had first indicated. And given the value for money, the number of addresses scheduled for completion this financial year has been increased from 3,500 to 6,400, which will still be delivered within budget. As of the 4th of November, 4,222 homes have been completed, with 309 high-level defects identified and passed to our in-house maintenance team for remedial repairs. Given the benefits and affordability, it is now proposed to accelerate the programme to achieve an annual roofline inspection at every council-owned property where required consent can be obtained. The contractor is currently also preparing to demonstrate their ability to deliver moss cleaning and fungicidal soft wash to 6 of our most badly affected roofs. And if successful, this work will be considered for inclusion in future programmes. Tenant safety and statutory compliance is set out in paragraphs 65 to 68. And in July 2023, the Scottish Housing Regulator informed landlords that they required to include a clear statement within the annual assurance statement on landlords' compliance with the relevant obligations in relation to tenant and resident safety in advance of the introduction of proposed new targets and indicators covering the following activities. Those activities are asbestos, dampness and mould, electrical, fire, gas, lift and water safety. The annual assurance statement submitted to the Scottish Housing Regulator in October 2024 also provided reassurance that there is no reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete or RAP within East Ayrshire Council's housing stock. Paragraphs 69 to 70 set out the proposed renewal of secure door entry screens and systems to 70 properties per year for the period of the plan. Paragraphs 71 to 76 of the paper outlines the continued support for owners through the scheme of assistance in relation to improvement programmes and also the continued aspiration to rationalise our stock through buybacks and disposals. The implications of the paper are set out in paragraphs 77 to 100, and paragraph 81 highlights that the Housing Investment Programme continues to support the highly successful apprenticeship programme being delivered by Housing Asset Services. There are currently 45 apprentices employed across a range of construction trades, with another 4 modern apprentices in business support roles. The apprenticeship programme provides excellent opportunities for adults as well as young people across East Ayrshire. So in summary, the paper sets out an ambitious programme of investment in our existing homes of over £132 million over the period of this plan. And I'm pleased to highlight to members that the proposed programme of works takes into consideration feedback from our tenants who chose to continue to invest in improvements in existing homes across our communities. The recommendations of the paper are set out in paragraph 2, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Neil. Another good report there. I think it's really interesting. A lot of this work, unless we had done, or the government, the Scottish Government had made changes to the right to buy, a lot of this work just wouldn't been able to have gone ahead, and we wouldn't have been able to plan this, and just with the wider stock, we're able to make much more improvements in terms of efficiency of people's homes. But I think there's issues here in terms of when you see some of the unit costs. The houses in Darvel, they're over 163,000 per flat. You know, that's probably, I don't know if many flats in the open market for more than that cost up in Darvel. So there's, there are issues of in terms of affordability, but we can do that in terms of right to buy. And it's a main street property, and it's right that we're doing this as we're doing elsewhere in Rankison and Green Street. You can see the visible improvements just without blocking them. Hope we're able to do even more. I think if you've been down Green Street and Comar recently, you'll seen the change that one block's made. Certainly, it must be more energy efficient for the tenants, and that's first and foremost, but it looks a lot better as well, so that's certainly welcome. So there's over 1,000 properties getting some kind of work this year, if I'm right, in terms of what we're saying here. I think it would be useful if once that's available, if that could be circulated to members, so as we know, what properties are getting done. Certainly this year, I know it's difficult to make it as it used to do many years ago, on a 5-year basis, but even this year's programme would be worthwhile circulating that. And I know it's subject to changes as well. So no, that's very, very encouraging. I don't know if you'd want to comment, Niels, would that be available?
Brilliant, Chair, thanks. Yes, I'm sure we'll be able to make at least this year's programme of work available, but there is still ongoing work within Housing Asset Services to allow tenants to have access to the Housing Improvement Programme, so that they will be able to go in through the Council's website and see what's actually happening to those their own property. That work's still ongoing, and we're scheduled to complete it by the end of the financial year.
That's helpful, and just future programmes, if where possible, if that could be circulated to members, that'd be really, I know that would be appreciated. And maybe a comment just in terms of the Scottish Government's own targets in terms of achieving net zero. I just in terms of effort to try, and the investment we've made in these pilot projects were to be extended right across East Ayrshire. I think we spend half the country's GDP in the process, you know. So it's just, I think there's got to be a touch of realism there in what we can and can't do. I don't know if you want to comment, Blair or Neil. Or...
Through you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the Scottish Housing Net Zero standards that may come forward, we've been able to do a best estimate of what we think that cost would be to retrofit our stock, and we are sitting round about £500 million to reach that standard. So when we talk about affordability, yeah, it is unaffordable for us at this moment in time. Thanks, Chair.
But we do what we can, I suppose. Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Neil for that report. And can I just add my apologies for phoning you late in the afternoon and Fridays and early time as well. Always a great response for you, Neil, when I call up. I think the highlight of this for me again is a continued investment over the next 5 years of £132.5 million. I've worked as first hand and I've been out in the tours looking at how that investment is paying off as far as the public first approach goes, and also for our new bathrooms and kitchens as they have been installed, having conversations where the tenants are absolutely delighted in the approach that we're taking that whole house approach. So it's really encouraging to know that we're still delivering under really, really trying circumstances. And again, I'm actually pleased to see the story run about the roof lines and what we're doing with there. We know the potential damage coming for leaking gutters and leaking roofs, and where that can add to other damages all the way out through the house. So I'm really good to see that's improving and it's went really well. It's another good report, Neil, and really encouraged by what I'm hearing. The area-based schemes, and I saw that I think it was 177 private tenants had taken part in that. I know for having discussions with the contractor when I was out on a site visit with them, that there would have been other owners would have taken that up. But the restrictions on the funding and the increased costs, again, it comes back to the increased costs where it potentially jumped from a cost of £1,800 contribution to £3,000. It was just not affordable under that 10-year payback. I just wondered whether it was still worth lobbying the Scottish Government to extend that and looking at that payback time, because everybody benefits it. The tenants will reduce their emissions because of no heat in the place. So it might be worth, I don't know, maybe alert the Scottish Government to consider an increase in that payback time even for the private tenants, which would meet the overall East Ayrshire demands in reducing that net zero.
Through your chair, thank you, Councillor McMahon. So I thought that this question might come up, so I took the opportunity to look back for the last 5 years at the area-based schemes, and we've targeted 1,301 owners through the area-based scheme, and we have completed 548 properties. So we've not been able to sign up 58%. So that alone tells its story about funding. The average costs previously were £1,984, but the last 3 projects, the average owner's contribution has been over £3,000. So the gap is getting wider. So I think there is merit in asking the question about the funding that has to come to allow these projects to deliver.
I think the funding is there to deliver it. My understanding was that the funding was that they can get access to that funding, but I think it's the payback time. I think that stops them, because if that was extended.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Sorry, I missed that part of the. I missed that part of the question. Yep. So it's a 10-year loan up to £5,000, and then they can apply for an additional £5,000 for repairs. That's for installation, but they can apply for an additional £5,000 for repairs and maintenance. But the length of time's not being extended, so there probably is merit in that to make it more affordable.
There's merit and absolute merit in that. Just you know how people are really struggling with fuel bills, etc. Just now. Anyone else, Drew?
Thanks, Chair. Just in missing Councillor McMahon's point there on the roof lines, great to see that getting done. Gary showed me a presentation of the roofs getting all the moss off it as well. The moss is just as bad as ice. It can be really slippy and cause slips and falls. So great to see our target is to try and get out all the houses needing this over a yearly period. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Drew. Graham?
Thanks, Doug. It's just a question on door entry systems. I said, obviously, we've got the issue of majority ownership in some of the some of the flatted blocks and we can't replace them until we get authorisation for private ownership. I just want to kind of urge the fact that we take the opportunity for buybacks within, specifically in these blocks. I'm thinking Mackenzie Drive and New Farm Lot within my own ward. It's a specific problem. So that's my kind of my ask is if we get the opportunity for these buybacks, we can take them if possible.
Yeah. That's the strategy we want to go down.
Yeah,
Gary.
Absolutely, isn't it? You'll hear a bit more about acquisitions in the SHIP paper that's following up, but it absolutely is a real strategy for us to try and rationalise that stock to give us the full control, and we are actively trying to do that. So we've ramped up our efforts to contact not only lasting blocks, but where we don't own to try and give us the ownership to allow us to move forward. So that is absolutely the aim.
Okay, thanks, members. Can I just say, in my haste, I forgot to go through the recommendations on page 55 for the HAMF, the Housing Asset Management Framework. So two sets of recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations on page 55 for the HAMF, and can we agree the recommendations on page 69 for the HIP, the Housing Investment Programme? Okay, now going to the next bit, which is Lisa and the Rapid Rehousing Programme. Was it SHIP? I've missed the SHIP.
It's the SHIP. The boat sailed.
Dear.
Yeah. Thanks.
See you on your toes, Gary.
Thanks, Chair. But it's we've got too many acronyms. We've managed to get an acronym for everything. The Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 2025 to 2030, which is known as the SHIP, is a 5-year rolling plan that sets out the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, and it's aligned with the priorities and outcomes set out in the Council's local housing strategy. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 of the report, and the details are set out in paragraphs 3 to 59. Paragraphs 3 to 5 provide the background of the SHIP and the requirements of the Scottish Government, and paragraphs 6 and 7 highlight that the annual HAMF review informs the proposals outlined within SHIP 25 to 30. Paragraphs 8 to 10 provide an update on the Affordable Housing Supply Programme and the sites that have been completed since the SHIP was presented to Cabinet last year. So completions by Council and registered social landlord partners have been achieved at Wallace Court, where we had 17 units, Bridgehouse Hill Road in Kilmarnock, where Cunningham Housing Association delivered 101 units, and Kennedy Drive in Kilmarnock, which is ongoing and due to complete by December 2024 of 48 units. Paragraphs 11 to 13 note that as at September 2024, 12 adult supported, 42 older ambulant and 19 wheelchair accessible properties have been completed since the wheelchair accessible housing target was introduced in August 2020. This represents 14% of council completions throughout this period of time. Paragraphs 15 and 16 of the report provide a breakdown of the proposed community benefits across each of the council's live and recently completed sites. At Kennedy Drive, an enhanced access point to Dean Castle Country Park has been installed, and there is an £11,000 community investment to be allocated through consultation with local groups. As noted in paragraph 17 and 18, the council's new build programme is complemented by the open market acquisition scheme. In this regard, an allowance is made for the council to acquire circa 50 properties each year in addition to the new build programme. Paragraphs 21 to 24 outline the Scottish Government's allocation of an additional £80 million to the National Acquisition Plan over financial years 24-25 and 25-26. Following agreement by COSLA leaders and ministers on Friday the 30th of August 2024, East Ayrshire Council were allocated £122,000 of the initial £40 million, and the paper highlights how this money was allocated to each local authority. Paragraphs 25 to 26 provide an outline of this year's Affordable Housing Supply Programme and other Scottish Government grant-funded initiatives. Paragraphs 27 to 30 confirms the Scottish Government's allocated resource planning assumptions for East Ayrshire covering the same period, 25 to 30. Paragraphs 31 to 36 provide an overview of affordability in terms of cost increases that continue to be reported and experienced across the sector, impacting the affordability and deliverability of housing proposals for all social landlords. Paragraphs 37 to 47 summarise the SHIP 25 to 30 proposals, noting a potential capacity to deliver up to 662 new and acquired homes in East Ayrshire over the 5-year period. Paragraph 46 confirms that the proposed SHIP was submitted to the Scottish Government by the due deadline, subject to Cabinet approval, as set out in Appendices 1 and 2 of the report. Paragraphs 38 to 41 set out the background and a recommendation at the strategic site at Cairn Road, previously George McTurk Court in Cumnock. After encountering significant challenges relating to factoring shares and securities of the remaining properties which have been unable to be resolved, this has resulted in the registered social landlord being unable to progress the delivery of the development. In order to ensure the delivery of Cairn Road, the Council has undertaken buyback negotiations with owners in the remaining block with a view to demolition and refresh of the full site. This would be done by the Council, however the decision would result in the deletion of Dalgleish Avenue in Ayrshire from the current SHIP due to affordability. Paragraphs 42 to 44 set out the proposed site deletions from the SHIP that include the previous approved sites at Dalgleish Avenue in Cumnock, Westgate House in New Mills and Hill Street in Kilmarnock. Continuing to promote the new build affordable housing programme at the scale and pace previously approved would be untenable in terms of forecast capital costs, ongoing borrowing impacts and, most importantly, anticipated on-cost to tenants' rent. Paragraphs 48 to 54 contain a summary of the findings of the new Cumnock Housing Need Demand Assessment, which Housing Services were asked to carry out at the Council meeting of 22nd February 2024. While the overall scale of housing need in New Cumnock is lower than in East Ayrshire as a whole, and indeed as the Cumnock market area, future housing investment in wheelchair accessible homes for older people, which enable independent living, could form future priorities. The most likely HNDA scenario, based on the evidence in New Cumnock, estimates that there is a need for 7 homes, of which 2 are affordable, over 20 years. There is no evidence that housing supply interventions are required in New Cumnock over the medium to long term, including the delivery of affordable housing. However, the findings of the New Cumnock HNDA need to be considered in the wider context of depopulation of rural areas and the need to address this whilst also ensuring that urban town centres and areas of high demand continue to benefit from investment and development opportunities. The Local Development Plan Affordable Housing Policy Update is set out across paragraphs 55 to 58, and the SHIP has been developed taking account of the implications which are noted in paragraphs 60 to 85. So to conclude, ongoing council-led works together with site starts and proposed developments will come forward at Kennedy Drive for completion, the refurbishment of Clinchard Place in Galston, and the development at Cairn Road, George McTurk Court and Cumnock. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 of the paper, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Very good paper and a good programme. Just looking at some of the kind of delivery aspects to it, and it seems, am I picking up there's some seems to be kind of issues with some of our other registered social landlords and other housing associations and their ability to assist us. We've enjoyed in the past good relationships in partnership with many of our local housing associations, but there seems to be a detect a kind of reluctance to progress with large scale projects. Is there other issues out there that maybe you want to comment on?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think that's the position nationally. I think it's not just locally that we're seeing that the risk that's involved now with taking forward developments of those size and scale and the cost implications that are involved are asking serious questions. And I think the whole industry is seeing that outcome coming.
Okay, thanks for that. Barry?
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of points. In terms of the open market purchases that we're doing, just wondered if we could maybe get members could maybe on the members portal even just some more details around that. And I think, with Scottish Government investment there too, that's welcome. If we can get some money from the government, then we absolutely should be using that to its full advantage. Just on the paragraph 54 on page 97, which is relative to New Cumnock in particular. I know, for example, the Deputy Leader is a passionate defender for rural communities, and give him his due in that regard. What I would say is that if the HNDA is as robust as we believe it is, and we've no reason to doubt, that obviously there are some concerns there in terms of the numbers that's coming out of that. 2 affordable properties over 20 years is a low figure. But I just wondered, in terms of the rural depopulation and how we can try and combat that, what looking at renewable energy and the amount of jobs that are potentially in and around the area, if that would have any other impact, or if that's kind of modelling that we can't really do at this stage and it would come in later years. I'm just trying to see, if there are other ways around providing additional properties at New Cumnock. Thanks.
Through you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Douglas. I actually touched on it when Councillor McMahon had asked me the question round about our 5-year priorities for the local housing strategy, whereby I set out that housing is just one of the main factors to be considered in terms of tackling depopulation. So while our HNDA, which is based on need and demand as they are, it gives us a long-term projections of housing in isolation, we would need to look at the other factors in terms of employment, community, housing, health, transport in the round, which has been done through the depopulation analysis, in order to better inform a really collaborative decision round about the delivery of homes in consideration of those other factors. Thank you.
That's helpful. Jim, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation again, Gary. And if I can just pick up on 1 or 2 points. And first of all, just congratulations again to the 4 nominations that the Chartered Institute awards our side, for the council side, and also congratulations to our local company and coming up for the awards they picked up was Connect Modular and the delivery Bridgehouse Hill. And it's always encouraging when we pick up national awards locally, and that wealth building aspect has been held within East Ayrshire Council. Paragraph 11 run about wheelchair and wheelchair accessibility, and that 10%. It's where possible and practical. What kind of barriers do we face would be the question about that, where we can deliver that. Given the demographics and what we've got about the demographics going forward, does 10%, my question would be, enough of the stock, given the preventative measures that we can take early just now to prevent that cost and maybe a future date? Really encouraged with the amount of acquisitions that we're doing. Hopefully we can push on with that and increase that. It seems with the grant we get for Scottish Government, that really helps when I think we're picking them up for 80,000 and maybe 40,000 of that's grant coming for Scottish Government. So it's really good that we could push that forward and pursue the acquisitions. If I could follow up on what Councillor Douglas has mentioned about New Cumnock, you're right, it's a passion of mine as rural locations, and specifically at this time, as I mentioned last year, run about New Cumnock. Blair did, but if I could mention the word and Barry used in the housing need and demand assessment process, is it robust? Because I think there was something missing in that housing need and demand assessment for me, and it was a deeper dive into the demographics. Right, we're not looking at that going forward and potentially where we're looking at that depopulation, if we allow it to happen, where it's predicted 7% can move. But the demographics are still going to be the same. The younger people are moving away predicted, and the older people are going to stay with us. So we know that demographic shift in the rural areas is more likely to be increased and no decrease. So taking that into account, my ask would be that New Cumnock does come back on to the SHIP programme. if I could take you back to last year when we had the discussions run about Dean Street, and it wasn't just about £3.3 million for 12 flats. It was run about £3.3 million to regenerate an area. So when I look at New Cumnock and I see the potential options there, and driving through New Cumnock, you come in for the South Authority, bearing in mind it is the gateway to East Ayrshire coming through the south. The third sector are doing their work, securing all buildings, making the community a more economic viable community with their social enterprises, looking at the Castle Hotel, looking at the Trotters building and working in partnership with the council, we've managed to secure that funding for them. As we touched on earlier, housing is more than it's more than just a house or a home. It's the impact it has on your well-being, your health, and it's the health issues that I particularly want to focus on now, given the demographics. What we have sort here over the last 2 or 3 months, with the papers in front of us, run about the demographics and the complex health issues that we're going to face off the back of disabilities, and compounded as we get older and older. The statistics run about for every £1 we spend in housing saves us 4 in health and social care. True. Acting on it just now in the rural communities is crucial for me to do that. Where we spend that £1 just now is going to save us going forward on our HRA accounts, because they're going to come under pressure with adaptations if we don't deliver in rural locations just now. And my focus is specifically on New Cumnock and Nishan. There are sites already identified, and we're going through planning processes where sites are difficult to identify for planning and house building. We've got sites that are identifiable in New Cumnock. So although my ask would be, and although it mentions in there we would only need 2, no, we don't. No, we don't. I think people will tell you in the paper that, and as part of the housing need demand assessment, and who were surveyed, that we don't have the right type of housing in the right locations in New Cumnock. New Cumnock, for the majority, it sits on the hill. Where we need more older people is sitting on the level, and we've got sites there in New Cumnock where they can, and we can build on the level. My ask is quite clear and simple today, that we reintroduce New Cumnock back into the ship and have another look at the potential sites in New Cumnock, whereby we can clean up that streetscape. We deliver not just houses, but we deliver a community. We know potentially there's economic growth that's coming to New Cumnock through the 9CC in the future, and the social enterprises are going to be there, keeping more younger people in the village. I was delighted when we got the papers to tell us that we were going to drop 7%. If we sat on our backsides and accept it, yes, it would drop 7%. But we're not going to sit on the backside, and I'm certainly know as the elected member for a rural community, sit on my backside and just let the statistics take place, their predictions. What we can do is do something about it. When we held the event about depopulation at Cumnock Town Hall, going around about the tables after the discussions, there was 2 issues. They said that we'd stop the depopulation, giving us the right type of houses in the right place, and jobs. So the ambitions of the 9CC is to create the jobs. Us as a council, we can fulfil that other part with delivering houses on the level for our older people and free up the houses on the hill for the younger people.
Well, Blair. Blair. Sorry.
Through you, Leader. Okay, so what we have in front of us today is our best professional recommendations aligned to the rent increases that we've agreed already as part of this session. So to introduce at this point, to introduce a site in New Cumnock to the SHIP programme would mean that the outcome for that would be either a reduction in our HIP programme, a removal of sites within the SHIP programme, or a reduction in acquisitions in order to pay for a site within New Cumnock. I had set out just previously about to consider a decision about rural housing in the round, and I'll just re-emphasise those points in terms of those other factors that may or may not impact on the delivery of housing in rural areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Just I used the word robust deliberately because I would take the best professional advice that officers are giving us, and I have no doubt to believe that HNDA is robust. And my concern would be that if we were to add in New Cumnock today against best professional advice, is that what is the impact throughout our council area, but it would include New Cumnock in terms of buybacks as well, or do we have to see another site drop out, which is of concern to me. I do think that we do need to tackle rural depopulation. £70,000 from the Scottish Government ain't going to cut that. I think I'm entirely honest. That's merely going to cover a report into this. But do we perhaps, and not for this meeting, that's the further work that needs done to then allow us to be able to take those steps, that if we take steps today against best professional advice, against that robust HNDA, that we aren't able to fulfil our other requirements through the ship, and the impact is wider as a result of that. Thank you.
I think it's worthy of note again about these costs and how we predict these costs going forward and the impact on the health and social care budget as well. Remember, if we don't deliver these, if we don't deliver the houses in the right location and the right type of houses, then it's going to have an impact on our health and social care budget. I'll repeat that figure again. For everyone we spend in housing, it's going to save us for in health and social care, not just in health and social care, but on adaptations budget. It was as robust as it could be, given the way the survey was set out. And I said that robustness to me wasn't really fulfilled taken, because I don't think it took fully projections for New Cumnock in that rural area going forward, because just taking housing and depopulation is one issue. Then I've said that when I spoke earlier on that to prevent that depopulation, we need housing, we need jobs. I said the 9cc and their partners are out there delivering that. Kilmarnock, I think, in one of the last papers, is projected to grow by 0.3%. And a lot of the private sector will be involved in that, absolutely, in delivering some of the affordable wheelchair accessible housing. But it's not going to be a New Cumnock. As a council, we can deliver that. I've already lost in Cumnock and Ward 8. The bus share site's already been taken off. It's crucial. It's in the main drag route through Cumnock. So the Cairn Road site it's a must go. The sacrifice for me there is that site in Ayrshire. No at the cost for me, New Cumnock. I know the houses are going to be in New Cumnock, and I think everyone's probably sitting in here, but it's how we prioritise that and what we do. We cannot just allow the places and the kids to move away from when there's potential that we can do and we can take process to do. It's to prevent that happening. Say before, it's the entrance to East Ayrshire for the south. It's had its carbuncle days and its award days. We can make a difference to that. We can make the difference in here, taking the decisions today, bringing it back onto the ship and having a look at it. How do we fund? I'm not asking for that to deliver this year or next year. It's back on the ship for the next 5 years.
David.
Just appreciate members are still at the debate stage, and that's perfectly proper. However, as Blair has clearly presented, his colleagues have been very clear on, you have a suite of measures in front of Cabinet for approval or not. If Cabinet isn't minded to approve the suite of measures, then as Blair's highlighted, Cabinet would be asked to give direction to officers as to what the alternative would be. If I'm picking Councillor McMahon up right, he's now confirmed, or I'm asking the question, are you confirming and can you confirm if you're proposing, and subject to getting a seconder, to make an amendment to the recommendations to include the New Cumnock site for further consideration in the next 5 years? Are you confirming, or can you confirm which site or which of the measures Blair identified you would be invoking in order to make sure there was sufficient funding allocated? Blair having highlighted that in broad terms the options would be we either build less houses on other sites, we either buy back less houses than we are in accordance with current policy, or we carry out less repair, improvement and refurbishment works to existing stock. But obviously it is a totality of measures, and if there's a proposal to change them, then it needs to come with a concomitant adjustment so that overall you've still got a balanced budget. I think it's clear that the site can't be added in without there being appropriate financial allocation, and the question for Cabinet, and I'm only raising it now so it can be part of this debate and members can discuss the whole proposal, which isn't just the inclusion of New Cumnock, but the removal of some other element of the current suite of measures to accommodate New Cumnock. So it'd be helpful, I think, for all members just to know the other aspect of that so that the debate can cover both aspects, because it's not just the merits including New Cumnock. There would obviously be consideration of the merits or benefits and debenefits, disbenefits of excluding either another site or making those other adjustments to identify and allocate the funding to this proposal, should that be the decision of Cabinet. So it might be helpful just to be clear on both elements of what's been proposed to allow members to take an informed position. There. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Claire, I'll just have a discussion. I think we'll officer at some point just moved to have a recess for a wee bit more debate, if that's...
I think David set out exactly what we would need for us to be able to have a set of proposals. We would need to have a clear line to say what you're asking us to do. Do you want us to stop doing the refurbishments of the existing stock? Do you want us to take something out of the buybacks? Do you want us to do something that's in it already? So which one do you want us to take out? Or do you want us to go back with an even, bigger rent increase? Do you want us to add it on so there's a higher rent increase? But I've got to say, for a higher rent increase, our best professional advice will still not be to go to New Cumnock, because there is identified need elsewhere, within the local authority area.
Claire, I'll bring in Claire and I'll comment myself.
Apologies, if we're going to take a break, then it might be redundant, my question. But my understanding was that Councillor McMahon wanted it added onto the future list, not onto this list. That's the confirmation I was looking for. Thank you.
Basically, I was going to say that as well, Claire. And but I think what we need, there is an issue there that we need to look at. That in terms of, we've had a discussion about depopulation, and if we're absolutely right to look at housing demand areas, and the methodology we employ is absolutely correct. But there is a flaw within that we would never deliver any kind of type of new house in some of our areas that are absolutely hemorrhaging people. And I think we've got to ask ourselves, is that an ability to have? I mean, we've seen them, from Muirkirk to Bellsbank to New Cumnock, there's large family houses. Well, anecdotally, maybe that's something to get professional advice, there is a lack of wheelchair type houses, smaller houses, houses in the town centre that might help us, sustain and stop the hemorrhaging of the population. And that's something we maybe want to look at in future years. But I don't think Jim was proposing to do that. Certainly this, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think that's something that we want to aspire to. And why no? Eddie, you want, and then I'll bring in Barry.
Just to be clear, what we bring here every year is a 5-year plan. This is not a 1-year plan that we bring here. So the money is, clearly we don't, the resource again, we don't build the houses tomorrow. It's a 5-year plan that we bring, and we ask you to approve. So that's what's here for approval.
Well, I think you make a fair point, Leader, in relation to the type of properties that we have, but I think that impacts on all of us. We know our elderly population is going to be increasing by a third in the next 20 years, and therefore having bungalows or level access ground floor flats are going to be vital, revitalising our town centres across and village centres across East Ayrshire. But what I think we need to do, and subject to what the Deputy Leader has to say, and that might come from the recess point, is are we amending this 5-year HNDA period, or ultimately we also know, and if we are, that we know our tenants tell us their biggest priority is not actually new build housing, it's investing in the current properties. And I would certainly have real concern about anything that was going to put that at risk. If it's in addition to, then should we not, and in terms of the 5 years going forward after this period, should we not be trying to put some more into the depopulation work that's been done in terms of that survey to see what we can be done in the round? And I think this is almost bigger than an HNDA in terms of how we stop rural depopulation. But if that's coming for the future, that's one thing. But if this is talking about amending this, then I think we need to just be clear. Thanks.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come back and then I'll maybe...
I'd like to move for a recess, Chair.
Okay, I was maybe going to get Jim to say a couple and then I'll move a recess.
If I would just pick up on what the Chief Exec said in his last comments, there would be identifiable need elsewhere. There will always be identifiable need elsewhere, and the rural locations will be left to dwindle. That's a fact. That's not going to change. Depopulation will happen, as it's predicted on the paper, if I don't do anything about it. So that's a fact. I'd be content just now to have maybe a wee break and take that and maybe have a discussion, maybe with the Chief Exec and Blair, round about what I might come back with. But I'm prepared to just let it sit now.
Okay, can I propose maybe a 15-minute recess? David, sorry, you want to come on?
You are the chair and it's absolutely in your gift, but I think there's 3 points to reflect on before we make it about Newcombe or any other site. The principle is, as the officers have said, as I've said and as Eddie said, the Chief Exec said, you have a suite of measures in front of Cabinet which represent a total proposal of spend against the budget. If there's any desire of Cabinet, and it's a matter for Cabinet to amend the content of those proposals, it needs to still balance the books. So if a site, any site, before we get to the merits of Newcombe that is to be added, then something else needs to be taken out to make free the funding to deliver Newcombe. If it's proposed to put Newcombe in and send officers away to look at it, you need to reflect on the fact officers have, and having considered all relevant matters, including the HNDA, they have not included Newcombe. So that's just going to go round in a circle and come back like a boomerang. So the first point is there needs to be a concomitant adjustment to what is proposed to make way for anything additional, respective of the merits. The second point I would encourage Cabinet to reflect on is it's not pick and mix with HNDA. Comments have been made about the HNDA. That is the total fundamental construct on which all of this is presented. If members are going to unpick the HNDA in relation to one part of East Ayrshire, they need to understand that the implication is that the HNDA could then be attacked or brought into question for any of the rest. And it's the loose end under which you could end up with no proposals in any sensible way. So the HNDA isn't an optional extra. Members would be encouraged to accept and have faith in it, and if not, then that's a different matter. We absolutely need to look at how we conduct the HNDA. And the only third point in terms of general business and governance and openness and transparency, and I recognise you are the chair and it's a matter for you for a recess, but I think this is a debate that would be better served at least finished and concluded in the public domain so that folk understand what the thinking is. However, if there would be an advantage, and again from a recess to allow clarity to come back into the chamber on the debate, then at the end of the day we're always in the hands of yourself as the chair.
No, there's been a request for a recess. I think we'll proceed to the recess, David. 15 minutes or so. 12:05.